To get anywhere, first you have to talk to this raving madman who gives you shoes. Shoes! Shoes!
It's me. I am said raving madman. Fun fact about me, I actually like collecting and wearing a lot of different types of shoes. You wouldn't know that because you often don't see me wearing shoes in my videos, but I like to collect different types of sneakers. I got these Converse like canvas shoes. Sometimes I like to splurge, get a pair of Jordans. Sometimes I like to be classy, wear some nice boots. I even got this awesome pair of like Sonic canvas shoes for the 30th anniversary. What was the name of the brand? I forgot what the name of the brand was. Aikido Footwear. I think they did like a partnership with Sega and they were doing like these limited edition shoes and I just knew I had to get a pair. I don't wear these very often because I think these are limited edition. I don't think they sell these anymore, so I'm definitely not gonna throw these. If it wasn't obvious, we're talking about shoes today. A lot of you requested saying that drawing shoes on Sonic characters or drawing Sonic's shoes specifically are a bit of a challenge. So this video is going to serve as your little guide for drawing Sonic's shoes. But before we get started, my name is Jake. I post a lot of Sonic fan art and videos related to Sonic art. So if you like the artsy side of Sonic, then please subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any future videos or live streams. And without further ado, let's get started. So the cool thing about drawing Sonic's shoes is that, like every other part of his body, they're mostly made up of basic shapes. So if I were to zoom in and just lower the opacity for a little bit, you can kind of see that Sonic's shoes are basically just these half circle shapes with a rectangle here for his buckle and another rectangle up here for the shoe cuffs with another curved sort of rectangle for this strap right here. So knowing that, you have a pretty rough foundation to build off of when drawing his shoes. So knowing this, if I wanted to draw his shoes from the side angle like this, I would start by drawing the half circle shape, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of space right here for his cuffs. And one thing that's important to note is that in this specific style of Sonic right here, his shoes are modeled a little bit differently relative to what you might see in the games. The game shoes look a little bit more pointed at the toe. So one thing you might want to keep in mind when drawing his shoes is what style you're trying to go for, because there are different eras of Sonic art where the shoes are going to look a little bit different depending on the video game, the artist and their art style, etc. For the sake of this example, we're going to be going off of this model of Sonic right here. So next, why don't we add a rounded rectangle up here? These are going to be his cuffs. And next, we're going to draw one curved line going down like this, and then another curved line going down like this, and then we'll draw a rectangle right here. This is going to be his shoe buckle. So here we go. We have our basic sort of outline here. Now we can add some of the little details. And if you're drawing digitally like me in like Photoshop or Ibis Paint or Krita or something, and you're able to make different layers, what I like to do is keep this like base layer on a separate layer, and then I'm gonna make a new layer for more of like the details and stuff. So we'll start by adding more of the details with the cuffs here. So we're gonna draw this line right here. This is where Sonic's leg would go into the shoe here. And we're gonna draw this little fold right here. And then we're going to draw the bottom like so. Wrap it around the other side. And do the same thing on the other side. We're gonna add like a little fold right here. Now let's move on to the strap. So I'm gonna draw another line right here. It's gonna make a little curve right there to show that it's folding to the other side. We're gonna add one curved line here, and then one curved line right here. And then we're going to draw the toe right here, loop it around like so. And you might want to leave a little gap because now we're going to draw the buckle, which is again just sort of this rectangle shape. And then we'll just add another rounded rectangle inside like so. Then we'll draw the back of the shoe. If you want, you can add sort of like a little wrinkle to show that the shoe is made of some sort of fabric and not like whatever glossy material that the video game shoes are made of. And now one thing that's really important not to forget is that part of the sole of the shoe is going to come down about yay far. It's really thin from this angle, and it's just going to follow the path of the bottom of the shoe like so. And we're going to draw a little diagonal line up like this, and then bring it down to match the bottom of the shoe. Now, if you want, you can add the little details, like maybe adding like a little wrinkle right here, maybe adding like another little loop right here at the cuff. You can add like the little dot marks if you want. Whatever floats your boat, whatever kind of style you're starting to aim for. And we can go and erase some of the little details like at the bottom right here. So there we have it. We have our basic Sonic shoe from the side angle. Now, obviously, there are going to be instances where you're not going to be drawing the shoe from the side angle like so. There may be certain poses where you need to draw them from the front or like this. So if I were to draw a more front-facing Sonic shoe like this would be an instance where I think it would be helpful if I actually start by adding a guideline just going down like so to give me a general idea of which direction the shoe is pointing. And then just like the last angle, I'm gonna start by just adding a rectangle, a rounded rectangle up here for the cuff. And then the front facing Sonic shoe kind of has sort of like this, I don't really know what shape you would really call this. Basically, each side of the shoe is going to come down at an angle like so. And then you're essentially going to have this rounded curved line here for the toe. And then we will draw two curved lines here and here for the strap. And then we're gonna draw just a little skinny rectangle here, because as you can see, the buckle is slightly peeking out like so. And this is what I would have as my basic sort of rough starting point with our basic shapes. So now once again, we can go and add in the little details. So we'll start with the cuff like usual, pretty much the same as last time. We're just gonna add some wrinkles here. And unlike before, we have some different wrinkle shapes. You don't have to follow these exactly, but they do kind of give you sort of a rough idea of the general shape of what the wrinkles can look like. I think that's one thing to keep in mind too, is that not everything needs to be symmetrical. The wrinkles in the last shoes were basically the same on each side, but here you can see we have a little bit of asymmetry going on. And that's because fabric in nature usually doesn't fold symmetrically. So you're gonna have moments where you're gonna have sort of like an asymmetrical sort of pattern of wrinkles going on here. So then we'll add the curved lines for the strap, and then we'll draw the main sort of body of the shoe here. And we'll draw the little rectangle here for the buckle. And if you want, you can add like another line right here to make it look three-dimensional. And then we'll add the part of Sonic's shoe sole right here. And voila, there is your front-facing Sonic shoe. And as always, if you want, you can go back, you can sort of clean up some of the lines here, maybe adjust the strap like I feel like I need to do because I didn't draw it exactly perfect. And you can add like the little accent marks if you want, add like the little curves at the cuff right here. But in general, this is what your front-facing Sonic shoe would look like. Now, if we were to draw the other shoe slightly behind the front-facing shoe, all we gotta do, just draw our basic cuff shape, our basic cuff rectangle, and we're gonna draw our half circle shape. One thing that's also important to note is that if you're drawing like this pose for the shoes where one shoe is facing to the front and the other's facing to the side, you'll notice that the cuffs are essentially on like the same level, but you can see that with the front, the toe is pointing out further down than the shoe that's facing towards the side. Because I've noticed this with a lot of Sonic artists, the angle's always sort of positioned where it's straight on, but you're also kind of looking at it from the top down ever so slightly. So you're kind of getting like a slight overhead view of the shoes. And if the shoe were to turn a little bit, obviously it would look as if the toe is sort of curving upwards a little bit, if that makes sense. You can also kind of see it's positioned so that the heels are basically aligned on the same plane. You can kind of see that one heel is right here, and you can't see it with the front shoe, but the heel would also kind of be on like that same level. You got one heel here. The other heel is probably like right here, so they're also even. Just some little things you want to keep in mind. So I'm just going to continue drawing my other basic shapes, like the strap right here. Then I'll add in our little wrinkle details and just kind of trace over the other lines that we just drew. Draw our bottom of the shoe right here. Then obviously the sole, follow that same path, just like so. One thing that's also important to note is that Sonic's buckle is only on the side of the shoe that's facing out away from the body. The buckle isn't on the interior, it's on the exterior. That's why you can kind of see it with the front shoe here, but with this shoe, it's on the other side. So that's why you're not seeing it here. I think I've seen that a couple times where like some people will kind of get confused. They'll put the buckle on the inside right here, but you don't want to do that. It's only on the outside. And then obviously if you want, you can draw some lines to represent his legs. So there you go. These are definitely the most two common Sonic shoe positions that you'll see. So now we're gonna try something that I think stumps a lot of people when drawing Sonic shoes. It starts to get a little tricky when you have these poses where Sonic is either walking or, in this case, running without doing his signature peel out. And you kind of get this angle where you can still see the red and white part of the shoe, but it's really the bottom of the shoe in the front foot that is the main focus. And then with the shoe in the back, it's kind of at this like weird upside down angle. This kind of pose is definitely something I still struggle with, but I've definitely been trying to practice and get better. And this is how I usually try to tackle these kinds of shoe poses. I would again start by drawing our rounded rectangle, only this time the rounded rectangle is going to have sort of a more of a curve going upwards here for the cuff, and you're only going to want to draw about half of it. And then next what I would do is I would just draw a little line to sort of gauge how much area this part of the shoe is going to have. And then once I draw that, I'm going to draw a line right here that's going to represent the base of the heel, and I'm just going to draw sort of like this like teardrop shape, which is going to be the bottom of the shoe. And then from the toe right here, this is where I'm gonna draw the red of Sonic's shoe. It's gonna kind of come down about there, I would say. And then from here, we can kind of draw the rest of the cuff right there. And then we can draw that sort of gray band that we saw in the last couple poses where you saw that little bit of gray. We'll just have that kind of wrap around like so, and add a little line right there to represent that little diagonal part. Now, as you can kind of see, it isn't exactly perfect, but in general, this is sort of like a good guideline, I would say, to start off with. We'll also add the stripe the white stripe here. Seven Nation Army couldn't hold me back. Now we can zoom in and kind of get a little bit more detailed. So we're gonna draw another teardrop shape in here. It'll kind of go like this. And then we can draw the lines here for the bottom of the shoe. Kind of clean up this part right here. And then you can erase any extra lines that we don't need, like this line right here, this line up here. Then we'll go around, kind of darken the lines that we do want to keep, clean up the cuff up here. And that is how you would draw this front shoe right here. So now let's move on to the shoe in the back over here. I would say in general, starting with the shape for the cuff is definitely a safe bet. And then drawing the shape of the shoe afterwards is usually the order that I like to go in. Now, for this particular pose up here, what I think might be kind of helpful is if I actually draw a line right here. This is kind of going to represent this sort of back part of the shoe where the heel and like where his, I think that would be where his Achilles tendon is. Is that right? I'm not an expert in the human anatomy, even though this is a cartoon hedgehog. Then we'll draw the rest of the shoe right here. So now we kind of broke the shoe apart into heel and toe to midsection. And we can draw another stripe right here. Then we'll draw a rectangle here for the buckle. This is what kind of our general outline is gonna look like. The bottoms of the sole right here. We'll draw this little angled rectangle here to show the back of the shoe. Then we'll get more detailed with our cuff. We'll add in the wrinkles, make it a little bit more rounded if you want. Add another wrinkle over here, kind of darken up the lines a little bit. Erase some of the lines that we don't need anymore. We'll add the other little rectangle in here for the buckle. And then on the back of the shoe, there's another little rectangle right here on the heel. So you definitely don't want to forget that. I think there are certain Sonic models where that little rectangle isn't there. I could be wrong though, but as I said earlier, depending on which game or which artist you're referencing, the shoes might look a little bit different. And one thing that might be a little bit worth noting too, and I just noticed this after noticing how I drew it, you may want to make the shoe kind of bend a little bit more to maybe show a little bit more exaggerated motion. You can kind of see it in the picture that I was referencing here. There is a very visible curve right here. And I think that's a good way of showing motion, maybe showing how fast someone is running. In the case of Sonic, as we all know, he tends to run pretty fast. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind when drawing the shoes too. Not just with this specific example, but I noticed that in a lot of Sonic Adventure 2 art, you kind of see this as well. But yeah, in general, this is how I would draw Sonic's shoes with a little bit of running motion involved. Now, as I've stated a couple times, Sonic's shoes have looked slightly different in different forms of media, so the appearance might change a little bit. So don't be afraid to look up reference imagery if you're trying to go for a certain style, whether it be from one of the games or from one of the comics. Maybe you're going for more of a Sonic Adventure 2 style or a Riders style, whatever it may be. And as always, practice, practice, practice. You're only going to get better if you keep practicing, keep drawing the shoes from different poses, and you're bound to get better and become a pro at drawing Sonic's shoes. But one part of Sonic's body that is arguably a lot harder to draw than the shoes are the hands. So if you want to learn how to draw hands on Sonic characters, click that video right there. For more Sonic art tutorials, make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any future videos and live streams. And that's about it. See ya.